take a week off.
I know we took a week off, but still. Welcome back to the Project Gen X podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alan Smith, along with...
I'm the other guy, Big Dave. I was almost the other guy, Alan Smith.
It's funny, after doing 9 episodes for Octoberfest, we literally take, a week and a half off and then come back and we can't figure out how to do any of this stuff.
No. And my current medical situation kind of makes it even makes me foggy-headed.
So anyways, guys, we really hope that you enjoyed Octoberfest 2021. I know we had a ton of fun.
We enjoyed building those for you.
Yes, and you guys probably noticed that we took a week off after doing 9 episodes in a month, and so we were just like, let's take a little break, and then we'll come back. And
actually, Alan said, "What are we recording next week?" And I said, "Nothing.
Yeah,
we're taking a break. I'm stick a fork in me."
But the cool thing is that we are back. We have new equipment.
Yeah, we upgraded a little bit.
Yeah, we bought new microphones and. Same setup, but we're always looking to make things a little better. Maybe we can, after a little while, we might talk about what microphones we're actually using or something. But this episode is kind of a palate cleanser in a lot of ways, where we're just going to talk about some stuff. I know that we can. It's
going to be one of our rambling.
It's going to be one of our rambling episodes because. I had something set to go, and I got to start doing the investigation on it, and then all of a sudden I realized this is going to take me a while.
So that's what happened.
Yeah, it's going to be very in depth because there's a lot to unpack, and we also have Barry coming back.
Yes,
for an episode, and that one's going to be
fairly in depth.
And we thank him for doing the bulk of the legwork on it.
Don't let me forget to bring the extra equipment to get a tablet into the system so we can play music clips as we're going.
Yeah, we're gonna figure out something. It's funny, we've been doing this podcast for over 2 years now. And it's only been recently where we've actually started incorporating some stuff that other podcasts start doing from day one.
Well, we did go with the keep it simple, stupid because we're both kind of stupid.
I admit, like I personally enjoy doing the post-production stuff, but I'll admit that I still don't want to have to do more than I need to have to. It's like, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I enjoy doing this until I get midway through it, and I'm like, oh shit, I've got another hour and a half of work that I'm going to be doing on this.
I offered to help, but he's like, no,
I know. Well,
I got
it's
it.
not even that. There's a few times that I've been like, maybe I just dump this over and let Dave take care of it. So.
You seem to enjoy it, and
I really do.
You tend to have a little bit more time on your hands than I do, especially since it seems like I'm working.
There's that
all the time.
And it's also getting into some personal stuff. It's one of those things where obviously I'm a single parent, but I'm not a full-time parent. I'm only like a part-time parent, with the custody situation. I have him half the time. So, if we record something, sometimes when we're recording this, and it might be the situation tonight, like after you leave, I immediately start doing the post-production on it.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes if it's a week that, that my son is here, I will, after he goes to sleep, work on it. Or if it's on a weekend, sometimes I'll just work on it while he's here, while he's running around, playing video games or whatever, and I mean, it kind of depends. And also the fact that, that I don't sleep, even though I would love to sleep a lot more than I do, but it's just one of those things where sometimes I'm like, it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm not tired. Let's start working on the podcast. So,
might as well.
I have many times over the years in multiple, areas of working on, whether it's music or podcasts or writing, working on whatever it was I was working at the time. That extra time of not sleeping has come in very handy. Yeah. Of just I've got the time. I may as well go ahead and do something seemingly productive.
Whereas I've got my regular full-time job. I've got a volunteer thing that I'm doing where we're trying to figure out the web streaming for them right now.
Oh, okay.
Which is taking up a good amount of time. And then there's doing this.
Right.
And then, my wife actually likes to see me from time to time.
Yeah, I don't have that problem right now of a wife or a girlfriend or any of that kind of stuff. So
that's been like I think 18 years or something at this point.
With you and her, yeah.
We've been married for 14.
Right.
Yeah, we dated for...
I have all these friends who have been married for like 10 plus years. Some of them coming up on 20, type stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's cool. You put both of my marriages together. I don't think I made 15. So, so who knows? Maybe marriage just isn't for me. It's like
it is what it is.
It is what it is. But I've actually, one of the. Wow, we're really getting into this. One of the.
We don't have to. We can change the subject.
Oh, we will. But
I can derail your train of thought in an instant.
One of the things that I have come to understand about my relationships.
Yeah.
We're getting into some therapy here and some self-reflection. Well, one of the things I've really come to understand about my past relationships is that I have been really guilty of. And Biscuit, you can hear Biscuit in the back. Apparently, Biscuit is always going to be on this show because he has to be. He just needs the attention. One of the things that I have unpacked of my own problems with relationships is the fact that I have not been friends with the vast majority of people that I have been in relationships or marriages with.
Okay, I can see that.
And so it's one of those things where it's it's all of that. That new emotion up front and blah, 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 type stuff. And, the I love yous and, this is so great. We're going to be together forever and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh.
Then the work starts.
And then the work starts. And it's like, wait a second. Do I even really like this person that much? And that's nothing like saying anything about any of their characters or anything. Well, most of them. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's been a character flaw on my part.
Sure.
So that's... outside of one relationship that I had that is still the healthiest relationship I was ever in, where we were friends.
Yeah.
And then, we became more than friends, but it was still one of those things where there were a lot of other factors that was in that, but her and I are still really, really close friends now. It's one of those things. And so it's like, yeah, that's okay. I at least I know the template for what I want next, Now that I have talked about something that's completely unrelated to this podcast for the last 3 or 4 minutes, since the last time we got together, I have taken in some media that I'm interested to talk about.
Okay.
I did go and see Last Night in Soho.
I thought we were going to do that together.
I did not know that we were going to do that together. That's what I did last weekend. Like I did Sunday night. I was like,
well, crapola. Now I've got to catch up.
Well, I haven't seen Antlers yet. Although it's funny because Antlers did better at the box office than Last Night in Soho.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do any spoilers on this. Last Night in Soho, I really enjoyed it. It's Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. The trailer is not dishonest of what the movie is. Okay. But it is a little deceitful about where the movie goes. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
And it's not even like a twist or anything because it's really one of those that I had an inkling of what was coming. I just didn't realize it was coming in the way that it did.
Gotcha.
Okay. Some great performances,
yeah.
Anya Taylor-Joy, I'd watch her do anything. I mean, she's a good actor. I mean, there's just no ifs. That the girl is kind of the main lead, Thomason something. And the thing is, I have not seen her because I think her big role was like Jojo Rabbit, which I never saw. And she's like really young. I think she's like 21 or 22 years old or something like that.
She's really young.
She's really new on the scene. What is her name? Thomasin McKenzie, that's her name. And it's funny because it's one of those things that I always love to see where she's actually from New Zealand, but she's playing someone from England. I always love to hear like people who have like a different accent than Americans like do a different accent than American. It's like, because we see that quite a bit with like people from like Australia and different places who are coming. They do American accents.
They're trying to get the accent,
but it's one of the
doesn't quite hit it.
Which for us, like, it's one of those things. Someone who is a lot more adept at telling the difference between what's a good English accent and what isn't will probably like eviscerate this. But considering that, like, we're just dumb Americans, it's one of those things. Oh, they got an accent. It doesn't matter. Throw an accent out there. Sure, it's English, or it's New Zealand or whatever, type stuff. So
yeah.
And then Matt Smith is in this also. Terrence Stamp is also, which I did not catch from the.
Oh, really?
Yes, and he's got a supporting role in it.
Okay,
he's wonderful. Terrence Stamp, for those of you who don't know off the top of it, Zod from Superman 2, as well as so many other things, but that's probably the big thing. Has got such a screen presence of just menace. Of like, he doesn't even have to do anything. All he has to do is just like look across the room.
Yeah,
it's
just
like,
kind of stare at you.
Guy,
That's it.
And he is really good. Like I said, in just he's got a supporting role, so he's not in it, a ton, but he is wonderful. And then the other one was Diana Rigg is in this, which this was her last role. She died earlier this year.
Oh. That's news to me, actually. I didn't realize that.
I remember seeing that it was in, or actually it was last year. It was September 10th of last year. She was 82 years old. I mean, that's.
Yeah, but I hadn't heard that she'd passed, actually.
Yeah, and Diana Rigg, she was a Bond girl. She was in on Her Majesty's Service, and she was in a whole bunch. She was also in Game of Thrones. She played Alina Tyrell, which she was wonderful in that role,
Oh, yeah,
and as well as, again, she was in The Avengers. She played Emma Peel, it's one of those things that, she goes back a long way. But, yeah, this was her last role that she did, and she's, again, wonderful in it.
I don't understand how I missed that piece of news, though.
I remember seeing it. I thought it was earlier this year, but no, it was in September of last year, so it's been a little while. I think this was one of those movies that was supposed to come out last year. That they got pushed to 2021, as so many of them have.
Oh yeah,
and but yeah, I really enjoyed it. The 1960s of it all is pretty good without being
hitting you over the head with it.
They do something kind of interesting, where it's it's this whole. The character of Ellie, that's the Thomasin McKenzie's character, the main character, has got this fascination with the 60s because, her grandmother, she listened to all the records, and she loves the fashion and this and that and all the movies and everything. And so it's one of those things with her psychic abilities or whatever it is, her gift, as they call it, where she's doing this time travel thing.
Oh, she's got the shine.
Something like, it's funny. It's funny because I heard someone else talk about that. So it's like it's the shinin, or whatever. So to avoid, but they never say anything like that. It's kind of a line that her grandmother drops at the very beginning about her, her gift or whatever, and it's one of those things where it's a little bit of the swinging 60s in London and Soho and this blah 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 blah, and then it's like, oh wait. That was a real crap time to be a woman, but it's not like beating you over the head of, it's like, no, the power dynamics here. Yeah, it's one of the things that happens so often with nostalgia in general. It's one of the things.
It's the rose-colored glasses.
Exactly, and it's also, it's not only that, but it's also one of those things where, like, the fact that the 80s just keeps like going and going and going and going. Yeah. And what's funny now is to see people who were not born anywhere close to the 80s who were like, oh, the 80s were so great. And it's like, yeah, the reason why you think that is because all the media you grew up on was hearkening back to that.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't a great time to be alive in a lot of ways. Like, yes, there was some good music. There were some good movies. You're looking at all the pop culture stuff. What you're not looking at is what was going on around the world politically and culturally and all that kind of stuff, where it's like
medically.
It's like no. It was a pretty crap time to be alive outside of the music and the movies, and that type of stuff. And it's something that's happened with the 60s for a long time. Everybody talk about, well, it's like, yeah, but you have to, the 70s and the 50s, even going back to that, it's just, that's one of those things we
the
grew
30s.
up.
The 30s were the ultimate crap time.
But we grew up on all that like 50s nostalgia because of the baby boomers. Know, Grease and Happy Days, and anything Stephen King, and all that kind of stuff. So it was just like, okay,
R.L. Stein, because all of his
exactly.
his stuff harkens back to that 50s, 60s Pulp Fiction horror
exactly.
sci-fi.
So it's one of those things that this movie kind of like hammers that home of, hey,
that's why a lot of our generation still has an affinity for that biker jacket.
Yeah,
that old school biker jacket.
Because again, Grease and the Outsiders, and all of that. Yeah, Happy Days, the Fonzie, and and just all that stuff that
all of that rolled over into the punk scene, because the punk scene had we're taking those jackets and
we're going to get into the punk scene here in a little bit. So.
Yeah, and dealt with all of that, and then of course we grew up on the punk scene, and metal scene,
and that was they handily embraced a lot of that, of that type stuff. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, so but yeah, I really enjoyed Last Night in Soho.
I need to go see it.
It is they build it as a horror movie, and it's not really a horror movie. It's really more of a thriller and suspense. And there is something that happens. The visuals in this thing are spectacular. There are a couple of scenes, especially at the end when we're like kind of in the final conflict.
Sure.
That it's one of those things like, oh, that is a beautiful, the way that they framed, the way that they did this, like the way it was shot, the way the imagery of it and all that kind of. I mean, it's just like, wow, that is pretty awesome. And also the whole deal. It's like, and they show a little bit of it in the trailer where. She goes to sleep and she's in her dreams. She's like back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And that whole thing where like Anya Taylor-Joy is walking down the stairwell and you can see Thomas and Mackenzie in the mirror.
Oh, okay.
And it goes back and forth between that and a lot of stuff. And it's one of those things also because there's like,
so it's kind of using the mirror as a portal between the two worlds. And
it's one of those things where they, for the longest time, they kind of hint at one can see the other. Like it's not just Ellie that can see.
It's a portal. It's a two-way door.
Kind of, but they kind of play with the whole whether or not. What's her name?
Are we touching in on reincarnation?
No.
Okay.
No.
I had to ask the question.
Yeah, I know, and because it's something that you could kind of get into. Like you could kind of look at, kind of like, oh, I might be able to draw it, but it's not because of the way it all plays out.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But it's one of those things where it's more of Ellie can see her. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm drawing a blank on what Anya Taylor-Joy's actual character's name is, but they never really. They only hint at the fact that she can see Ellie. They never actually make it. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like. Okay, and it also kind of hints at the fact that what it comes down to is that they're inhabiting the same body in some ways, even though it's one of those things where Ellie a lot of times seems to be on the outside looking at her, but there's a scene early on where like she's making out with Matt Smith's character, and Jack is his name. I remember that. I can't remember her name for whatever reason. In an elevator, and then like Ellie wakes up the next day and she's got Hickey in the same spot. Oh. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, what happened? It's one of those where it's like,
yeah,
okay, what's going on here? It's a pretty interesting.
And you didn't want to talk about this preview in the episode we did Halloween Kills.
I wanted to talk about Halloween Kills. I didn't want to talk about the previews. Plus the fact I had seen this preview so many times prior to that it wasn't anything new to me.
That was the first time I'd seen it. So.
And that was the whole thing with that, with talking about the previews, and that was it. Because I go to the movies on a regular basis for the most part. Like Eternals opens this weekend, and I'm going to at some point go see that. And then Ghostbusters Afterlife is the next weekend, and then there's several things coming. Over the next couple months.
Now that one I want to go spend money on and go see. Me and Renee will probably go see that one.
Right.
But because money's tight, we have to pick and choose what we do. Since you were talking about movies. Renee and I have actually picked up a new. It's actually been out a while, but it's on HBO Max. It's called Lovecraft Country.
All right, tell me about it. Pitch this to me. Come on.
Okay, so first off, it's a Jordan Peele
I know.
joint.
I know.
And the TV show is based off of a book called Lovecraft Country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based in I'm going to say probably the 50s, maybe 60s. No, it's definitely the 50s because everything is uber segregated.
Right. I know it has to do with the civil rights movement and everything. So.
But it's basically about a family finding out that they've got a magical background.
Okay.
And trying to rediscover their history because it's been hidden from them. And it gets into time travel. It gets into metaphysical. It gets into horror. It's literally a television show that's based on a book where the book ends up in the television show.
Mm-hmm. And
it ties directly into the family that's being talked about in the television show that the book is. I mean, it gets, and we're only into the first season, but we're really enjoying it.
Well, there's only one season of it so far.
Oh, is that?
Yeah. So, but that is one of those that when it premiered last year, I guess it was, that I was like, oh, I'm going to have to go check this one out. And then I just never got around to it. Then I started hearing people who were like, I really like it. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm like, all right, I've already watched enough shows like that.
Well, hold on. If they can't figure out what's going on, they need to find a simpler television show.
Well, it's just like...
Because this one's fairly easy to follow.
There was even a Saturday Night Live sketch where they were talking... It was funny because it was actually set... There was people that were like sitting outside the stadium getting ready to go into a Titans game, which was I thought was pretty funny. And they were talking about Lovecraft Country, and like somebody was trying to explain it to the rest of the group, and they were all like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It definitely winds in on itself,
right?
But it's not that hard to follow.
Okay.
I mean, I've found it very enjoyable. It's one of those things to where I've got to be in bed by 9 because I've got to get up at like 4:30 to be at work the next day, and I'm like, I really want to watch another episode.
Yeah,
but
well, like I said, it's there's only one season of it.
Yeah,
which is funny because several HBO shows, like I watched Euphoria when it was, when it came.
That's
on.
one that I've been meaning to watch.
I really liked it. It's not always easy to watch, and I say that because the subject matter that it approaches is just not very easy to watch. Sometimes, dealing a lot with like. Addiction and, familial problems and even, like some sexual and gender, politics and that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where, at least in my estimation, I never felt like I was being beat over the head with anything.
Sure.
But it's still one of those things where it's like, Euphoria is really weird because they do this whole thing where like when, and again I can't remember her character's name, but when Zendaya is like in the moment of the drug stuff, they have this very ethereal what's going on around her that's very pretty and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But it's one of those
soft
things,
focuses,
pastel
colors.
Yeah, and it is, and it's one of those things like, and the music, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, that's what. But then it comes back to the ugly reality really fast, where it's like it's very jarring sometimes going from that dream-like, everything's always wonderful, blah blah blah, to right back into reality of wow, harsh light of day, type stuff. And
you say that, and that kind of reminds me of that Marvel show that was on Fox. That was the
Legion.
Yeah. Because it would be very kind of dreamlike and ethereal. It don't
happen on the astral plane. That's the whole thing with Legion, whenever, I know. But I enjoyed
that show up into the point that I went, I forget what happened, but I stopped watching it, and I need to go back and
they
pick
had
it
a
up.
couple of, there was also, there was that other show that Fox had that was called The Gifted, which was, again, it was an X-Men. It was in because the Polaris and different, there were all these, you had the Strucker twins, and all this stuff, and it was like, oh, this is pretty cool that they're going pretty deep on some of this X-Men pool here. And I watched I think half of the first season and liked it. I just fell off with it and didn't come back, and then only got like 2 seasons. And so I'm like, I keep going back, and I keep hearing, no, it's really good. You should watch it. But I hate to go in and watch something like that knowing that it's going to end in only 2 seasons. You know, type. Same thing with Legion. I kept hearing good things about that as well.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great show.
That one was on FX, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an FX show, so it was a little bit.
Yeah,
it was
a little darker.
A little darker, a little more hardcore.
Which I'm fine with. You know? Especially with that character. You know, again, going back to my comic book dorkiness. You know, I know who Legion is, and you know what was going on there. You know, with,
I just something David, happened in my own personal life, and I fell off from watching it. Right. And I never picked it back up.
That is, you know, it's funny because you know, we're in a new television season now, and there are certain shows that I have watched fairly religiously, you know, for a while.
Okay.
That I just really didn't come back on this year, and it wasn't for any particular reason. It's just I just haven't watched as much television, you know, in the last couple months as, you know, I may have prior. So I've been kind of catching up on some stuff, and some of it's been good, and some of it, and like one of the shows.
What are you watching right now?
One of the shows that I've been on since day one is the Goldbergs.
Okay. I hear a lot of good stuff about that. I just haven't watched it yet.
The Goldbergs is a lot of fun. Again, it's all 80s porn. That's all it is. I mean, it is. I mean, it's just like, and it's one of those things that it's narrated by, or it's, you know, because it's one of those things where it's the Adam Goldberg, who is he's like the producer and the creator of the show, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it's based on him growing up in the 80s, you know, and the voiceover, you know, like this doing the narration, it's Patton Oswalt.
Okay.
It's kind of like that Wonder Years thing where it's the older him looking back. And it always starts off, it was 1980 something, and they go into whatever the premise of the show that episode's going to be. The thing that has killed me with it, though, is because one week they'll say it was 1980 something, and they'll be covering something that happened like in 88. And then the next week it'll be like, it was 1980 something and blah, blah, blah. And it'll be like, that happened in like 82. You know, so there's no like starting at the beginning and going forward. It's just like they're pulling stuff from everywhere.
So they're jumping around
all over the place. And it can be kind of jarring sometimes, but it's also one of those things where they most definitely are keeping it tongue in cheek, you know.
Sure.
And so it's one of those things that like they just started the 9th season, which I can't believe it's been on for 9 seasons, you know. But the thing is,
I bet they end after 10.
Maybe it's kind of getting to a point where they did a spinoff a couple of years ago. It was called Schooled, and it was set in the 90s. It was one of the characters that like they basically jumped ahead, you know.
Okay.
And they were doing the same thing. Actually, it was several of the characters, because it was basically the high school that he goes to. It was jumping ahead to like that school 10 years later, and like his sister's best friend Lainey had come back, you know, and she was a teacher there now.
Oh, okay.
And so it's one of those things where, but you still got like all the same people that you had, you know, like the gym coach and you know, Tim Meadows is the principal of the school, you know, and all this kind of stuff.
Okay, wait a minute. I did not know that.
Well, actually, Tim Meadows, he's the guidance counselor in the Goldbergs, but in Schooled, he was actually the principal of the school.
I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch this, because I like Tim Meadows.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like, what's the guy's name? Brian, is a comedian. Oh, he was the gym teacher, you know, type thing.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where you start going, what's his name? Clancy Brown has got a reoccurring role where he's like I think he's the history teacher or something like. Yeah, it's one of those things.
Okay, that's fun.
Like Steve Gutenberg has a reoccurring role where he is a science teacher, and you know, and it's one of those.
I'm gonna have to go back and pick it up.
And they bring different. You'll get different people. You know, from like I think Anthony Michael Hall's been on the show, and
nice.
I believe Molly Ringwald was on there. There's a whole bunch of like they keep bringing, you know, and like, you know, they've done a Breakfast Club episode. They've done you know, they've done all. They did a Back to the Future episode. They did Transformers the movie. You know, all this stuff, and it's one of those things where like the character of Adam Goldberg is very much who we were, of really into like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, he's still, even now, like he's like a senior in high school in this season, okay? And it's one of those things where he's, you know, he wants to make movies. Like that's his whole thing. He's really into movies and all that kind of stuff. But he still has like all of his toys like in his room. You know, he's like 18. Yeah. And it's like one of those things.
Probably a member of the AV club.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's every bit of that stuff where it's like he's very much a geek, very much. You know, and he has friends, you know, that are in that same,
absolutely.
And it's sometimes I watch it and I'm like, wow, this is
uncomfortable.
This reminds me a lot of some stuff. Yeah. And he's got like his mom is like really like his dad like is just like, I just want to come home and watch television and be left alone,
Yeah.
But his mom
familiar.
is like very overbearing. Like she's like very much like the snowplow parent of,
Oh no.
Yeah. But she's also a really funny character on top of it.
Okay.
All. It's a good show. I just, for whatever reason, have not picked up on it this season as much, and it's really kind of coming to a logical conclusion of he's the youngest of three. He's the last one who's still in high school, who's getting ready to move on, and his sister is now engaged, getting ready to get married, and all this kind of stuff. So it's one of those where it's coming to a fairly logical conclusion. I need to jump back on it for this season.
Okay.
The other one that I just sometimes ask myself why I'm still doing this, but then I'll watch an episode and be like, oh yeah, this is why. Is the Connors just came back, which is the Roseanne spinoff.
Yeah, I tried with that one and I just I couldn't get into it.
Here's the thing with the Connors is that since Roseanne was fired from the show and they killed her off, that was the big thing with the way that they brought it back is that she died of an opioid overdose, which was something they had set up prior. It wasn't this or well. You really understand why that show lasted as long as it did, because Roseanne Barr is funny and she made that show funny.
Yeah.
All the stuff that they're doing on there now, they're really like focusing on Darlene, which, don't get me wrong, Darlene is probably the most compelling character to come off of that show.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're still doing Darlene at 40-something the same way they were doing Darlene as a teenager. And it's one of those things where it's like Darlene was never funny. She had some funny lines here and there.
She was the dark, mopey one,
right? And it's one of the but it was
moody,
one of and that's
probably a little bipolar.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where they're still doing a good job of depicting what a lot of Middle America goes through.
Yeah,
one thing that they've done that has been a brilliant move is that Katie Seagal, Peg Bundy and Gemma from
Sons of Anarchy,
is on the show now, and her and Dan got married this season.
Oh, okay.
It was somebody that like they went to high school together, so it's one of those things that. And they went through all of the like.
So Peg finally killed off Al and went over and married Roseanne's husband.
But it's one of those things where they really did, through the last couple seasons, unpack the whole Dan didn't know if he could move on without Roseanne, and it was one of those things where he was really kind of conflicted. He was like, I found this new person, but I feel like I'm betraying my wife by type stuff. And they really unpacked a lot of the what it takes to grieve and to move on with your life and that kind of stuff. And so it's one of those things that she has been a wonderful addition to the show, which she's
a great actor.
She's great in anything you put her
just
in.
Don't let her sing.
Yeah, she does sing in it a little bit. Was a little bit, and that was because it was one of those things. She was touring. She was in a band.
Katie Seagal herself so much wants to be like a professional musician.
Well, she was a backup singer for Bette Midler.
Yes,
and look, Katie Seagal.
She's a backing vocalist.
That's what I say. Katie Seagal is a backing vocalist.
Yeah,
she is, and it's one of those things. There are many people. I'll tell you somebody else who is the same way is Carney Wilson.
Yes,
Carney Wilson is great in a group.
Yes,
I don't like hearing her out front. That is, but it's not that she's a bad singer. It's just that she doesn't have the voice to carry, to be a front person. But she's wonderful.
You've got three types. You've got the front person who can't do any kind of support sing with a group or anybody at all. You've got those that are supporting singers that all they can do is harmonize.
Is there a reason why you're giving me the finger right here?
I'm not giving you the finger. Shut up. And then you've got folks that can do both.
Right.
And those are the really, truly gifted vocalists.
Agreed. it's been kind of cool watching the Connors over since they came back, because they have brought back a bunch of characters from, last season they brought back Danielle Harris as because remember she was on Roseanne.
Yeah.
She was what was her name? She was a next door neighbor, and it was one of those things. Her and Darlene kind of had a little bit of a rivalry in a lot of ways because they were so polar opposite of each other.
Yeah.
But now she comes back to town and they're hanging out, kind of one of those things. And it really took she was on one full episode, and it's kind of one of those things where they had become friends, and this kind of stuff. And then Darlene goes over to talk to her, a couple days later, and she died. The whole reason that she had come back to town is that she had brain cancer, and she didn't have a lot of time left, and she wasn't telling anybody why she was back in town.
Okay.
And so it's kind of one of those things. I hated to see them kill her off because she was such a good character.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it goes back to that whole. They were always good about throwing real life into this sitcom. I mean, let's go back. One of the in our generation, as far as sitcoms, one of the most iconic moments on television was when they found out that Jackie was being beat by her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And, and it's one of those things where, there's that moment where, Roseanne tells Dan, and then she walks out of the room, and Dan stands there for a second, kind of looks around, and then walks out, and exactly what's getting ready to happen.
Oh, yeah.
He went over and beat the crap out of the guy.
As should have been done.
I know. And it was also one of those things where if you go back and watch that episode, when he leaves, the live audience are behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, whatever, type thing. But it's still one of those things where it's I remember that was a really heavy episode.
Yeah, it was.
And as well as a bunch of other stuff that happened, And,
it was funny,
show.
but
there was a lot of real life to that show.
Part of the reason why it was so funny is because a lot of times they would take you to a very dark place and then bring you back out of it.
Right. A lot of it goes back to 25 years ago when I was in college and I was taking an English class, and I remember the professor said that there are two types of laughter. There's a laughter of humor, and there's a laughter of knowing.
Yeah.
and that is yes, that is very, and it's one of, and you can always tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
There is a and it's oh yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And that's again, the Connors is not as good as Roseanne. I'll say that straight.
No, it's not going to be.
It never will.
I tried to watch it. I couldn't get into it. It didn't have the same feel for me.
It doesn't. And they've done everything.
Even when Roseanne was still on the show, I tried to get into it. And
when they brought Roseanne back for that one season,
right.
It wasn't the same. But I also looked at it as okay, this has been 20 plus years at this point, and they're getting back into it. Give them a little bit of time, and then that whole thing happened. And they come back to something completely different than what they were.
All I'm
going to
say is I will never take a prescription for Avian right now.
Ambien, yeah.
Ambien. Sorry.
That we're not going. That's a whole other thing to unpack.
Yeah.
That
the amount of people that have basically been canceled because of that drug. There's
Ambien. Dude, I have Ambien stories. So I was on it at one point, and I think I've told that before. My final thing with Ambien, I stopped taking it was because I did not know that I had purchased a guitar amp off of eBay for 3 days.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I got an email hey, are you going to pay for this thing? And I'm what are you talking about? And I went and looked on which I was in the market for one to begin with.
Yeah.
But I did not realize that I had purchased it for 3 days because I was...
Was it a good guitar amp?
Yeah, it was a Marshall combo. It was,
okay.
It was a JCM 900 that I used to have.
I remember.
And it was a good amp, know, but it was still one of those things where it was I did not realize that I ordered this, completely no memory,
They really should take that off the market.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyways, okay, so the next thing that I have, and it was something that I remembered hearing about, and then it just completely left my mind for whatever reason. Last night, I was flipping through the channels, and with having YouTube TV, I have several channels that I normally wouldn't, type stuff.
Yeah.
And I have Epics, which is, I think I don't know. I barely.
No, it's a pay channel.
I know it's
like
a pay
it's
channel.
like Showtime and HBO and all that.
Well,
but it's mostly movies,
right? But they were showing an episode of this. It's a 4-part documentary called Punk that was produced by Iggy Pop, and it is excellent. I watched all 4 episodes.
Nice.
They interview. It came out in 2019, and I remember seeing something about Iggy Pop was producing some kind of punk documentary, and everything. But I kind of it got lost somewhere in the shuffle. And of course, being on Epix, I didn't at the time didn't have any of that stuff, So it's like, oh well, I guess I'll have to figure it out some other way. And then so it was one of those things I saw, and it was like the second or third episode that I ran into, and I went back and like, oh look, on demand, they're all here. So I just started at the beginning, And it's really good because it does. It starts. They talk to Wayne Kramer from the MC5, and they talk to Iggy Pop, which were and then of course they're talking about hearing the Kinks do "Girl You Really Got Me," and that guitar sound and how that kind of played into and all that kind of stuff. So you get that prehistory of that. They talked to Sylvain from
nice.
Which this is before he died last year. They talked to Henry Rollins. They talked to Debbie Harry and Matt, the guitar player. What's his name? The other member of Blondie.
Okay.
They talked to Wayne County, which I had completely forgotten about. They talked.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't forget about Wayne County.
It was one of those things that, like, whenever I started, I was like, oh, dude, I forgot about Wayne County. It's just like, yeah, because for whatever reason. They talked they don't talk to everybody.
But they talk to a lot of them.
Johnny Rotten. And his stuff, which you know how I kind of feel about Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed his interviews because the way that they do it is it's literally they're sitting on a couch kind of looking right straight into the camera.
Yeah.
Talking, maybe a little off. The camera might be a little off depending on who it is, type stuff. Johnny Rotten, is sitting right straight in front of the camera, smoking cigarettes and just being Johnny Rotten for all of it. And like not lying about a single thing.
Well, see, that's the thing about Lydell, though.
I know.
He is who he is, but you don't have to wonder where you stand.
And I'll tell you one of the things that I have liked about John Lydell, I'm not going to say Johnny Rotten, I'm going to say John Lydell, is the fact that over the years, every time, and he does it here as well, every time he has talked about Sid Vicious and about what happened to Sid Vicious and how, the whole Nancy Spungen of it all because of, her introducing him to heroin, that kind of stuff. He has gone on record saying Sid would have never dated someone like Nancy Spungen if I hadn't introduced him to her. And I take responsibility for what happened to him because of that.
Wow.
Which is,
that's
that, and he has. I mean, I remember seeing that documentary, The Filth and the Fury, almost 20 years ago. And same thing,
and he's still taking responsibility.
And like in this thing, he did. He looked straight in the camera. He's like, I take responsibility. I have to live with this every day. Yeah. I introduced her to him, or him to her, and they both wound up dead because of it. Just.
Some people you just can't put them together.
I know.
It's like putting matches to gasoline.
I know. What's really kind of cool is that it starts off in that pre era.
Yeah.
Of course, they talk to Marky because Marky's the only long term member of the Ramones that's still alive. Well, I guess is CJ still alive? I think he is, but I don't know. But Marky is kind of the most notable of the Ramones that's still alive. Of course, they talk to him. They talk to. The guys from Bad Brains, and they talk to multiple people from Black Flag.
Okay.
They get Fat Mike from No Effects. So now they even get Kathleen Hanna. Kathleen Hanna from Bikini Kill comes in towards the end of it. They talk to what's her name from L7? The lead singer. What is her name? They talked to Dave Grohl. They talked to Duff McKagan is in this. I mean, it's one of those things where, of course, Joan Jett.
Oh, yeah.
Jello Biafra is in here, from Dead Kennedys. They talk to just all kinds of people. Thurston Moore. I forgot he was in this. They talked to Viv Aberdeen from the Slits.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
they really go.
Did they talk to anybody from X?
Yes, they had. John Doe as well as what's her name, Exene. They talked to her also.
That's probably been one of the more amazing shows I've been to.
Yeah,
because I got to see the original lineup of X play here in Nashville.
But they really do like talk to a bunch. Oh, they Noodles from.
Really?
From
that's nice.
The Offspring, and Billy Joe Armstrong also, because they get on up into like the '90s punk stuff. Here's the thing.
I'm not a fan of the Offspring.
They really are. I mean, Green Day.
Or Green Day,
yeah.
Sorry.
They get up into a lot of that, and they talk to, what's his name? Of course, Mike Ness is in this also. They talk to, what's the dude's name?
Okay, enough with naming.
Danita Sparks, that's who we're talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to see this documentary.
It really is good. Like, it's very, I mean, again, like, they don't, there's a few people you go, why didn't they talk to anybody from the Misfits, or why didn't they talk to anybody from several
you
other?
Can't talk to everybody.
Well, I know, and there is that whole you can't talk. But what's really kind of cool is they start off and they're talking about the early stuff. They get into the Ramones and they get into all that kind of stuff. And then they get into the next episode is predominantly about the British side of it.
Yeah.
And that's where they talk, they talk to one of the, I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but one of the members of the Clash.
Okay, I was going to ask why haven't I heard the Clash mentioned?
The Clash obviously is, of course they talk, and they talk about a bunch of the different, not just the Slits, but also the Bags and the, and like all these different, like, Susie, that's the other thing. Susie Sue doesn't show up in this, which I was kind of shocked about that, but it's. They go through so much of that. And then the next episode is pretty much about the hardcore scene in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because some of those guys now kind of look back at that as like, I'm really glad that went away for what it was then because of how it had been co-opted by a lot of white supremacists.
Yeah.
And it also just became way too violent than what we ever wanted, and it's one of those things. Like I said, they talked to what's his name? That was lead singer for. He was lead singer for Black Flag, and then he went and formed the Circle Jerks. Shoot, I can't remember his name. I'm losing all punk credibility here.
Yeah, you are. Of course, then again, I never really, being the metal guy, I never had much punk.
But it's one of those things where they go through all of that stuff. And then when you get to the fourth episode, that's whenever they start talking about like. When grunge and then like the
grunge
90s.
Is just Seattle punk,
right? And that's the whole thing that they talk about. They talk about how like someone like Soundgarden is not punk, but Nirvana was in a lot of ways. I mean, it's like talk about the difference between the two. And it's not them.
Mudhoney.
Yeah,
punk.
Exactly. And they go through all that stuff, and they do get into the whole like, and they talk about like Epitaph Records and how like all of a sudden. They exploded in the 90s, and they get into the Warped Tour, and they talk about how like everybody wants to look back at that era and say, "Oh, you guys sold out," and blah 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 blah. And they're like, no, we brought punk to the masses. Where it's a, what would you rather have? Would you rather that people? Well, it's a good question about music in general because we see this all the time.
Oh yeah, this is an argument.
An age old
because you have the first group that discovers the band,
right?
Those are the people that actually make them popular. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's be honest. If you like a band and you're the first one to discover them, you're going to be sharing them with everybody you know.
Right.
Well, all those people are going to share them with everybody they know. And
once you get to the third and fourth generation on that, usually the first generation, like, I liked them before they were cool.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and
look, dude, just enjoy the fact that your favorite band is getting popular.
And by the fourth or fifth generation, you're also getting, I don't like those guys because they sold out.
Exactly. And that's what they get into a lot into this of like.
And to quote Jason Newsom from Metallica, we sell out every night.
Right, exactly. And every seat, every night, exactly. And it is one of those things where they get into a lot of that at the end of it. And again, I'm not a huge Green Day fan.
But
don't get me wrong.
I'm a hypocrite on that, even because I'm not a fan of most of the Metallica stuff after Injustice for All.
I know. I know you make that abundantly clear every time.
And I'm also admitting I'm a hypocrite about it.
I'm not a big fan of their stuff after, when you get to Load and further.
No,
I mean, it's like I think that between Load and Reload, there's a good album in there. There's not a good Metallica album in there, but there's a good rock album in there. I mean, that's, between the two of them. But unfortunately, they put out both of them, and there's a lot of just middling nonsense on both of them, between the two. What I was going to get to, though, is that the Green Day of it all is kind of one of those where it's one of the things they do in here that I really enjoy is that they'll talk to somebody, in a band, and they'll have a record player sitting there.
Yeah.
And they'll pull out the vinyl and put it on and talk, whatever, and they'll put it on, and then they'll have people listening to it. Like, they'll have different people listening to the song, and they'll kind of be, like, reacting to it here and there. And it was something that, like, they put on Dookie, and then Billy Joel drops it on
there's all kinds of comments I could make. I know,
but the song. What's the song? Do you have the time to listen to me? You know that song.
Yeah,
and I can't, because it's one of those things that the title never appears in the. It's one of those songs, and like Marky Ramone is sitting there listening to it. He goes like, "Yeah, there's a lot of Ramones in this."
Yeah,
I mean, it's like it's one of those things where they're kind of going through all this, and it's they talk about Green Day, about them starting off as really wanting to be like, they're this West Coast Orange County punk, type stuff.
Yeah.
And how they crossed over in the mainstream and got huge, like right off the bat. Dookie wasn't their first release. They had a couple of prior to that, independent releases and stuff. But that was, they come out on their major label debut and just like sell a stupid amount of records.
Yeah.
And how people like, they sold out and this and that, and they're not punk anymore, and this and that. It's like, and that again goes back to when they're talking to the founders of Warped Tour, because it's one of the things they said, they were like, look, we were into skaters and and all this kind of stuff, and so we were like, hey, why don't we just bring all of this stuff out, and all of a sudden, we've got 20,000 people showing up to a
skating event,
right?
basically.
And there's all these bands that you like, but then everybody's like mad because Vans is supporting it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you sold out.
Somebody's got to pay for all this.
And that's
crap.
what he said. He's like, we never made a dime off of sale, like actual ticket sales. It's like we would have never been able to do what we were doing if it hadn't have been for that corporate sponsorship.
Yeah.
At least we were doing something that was related to what we were trying to put out there, and we brought punk to Middle America.
And I mean, you don't get much more skate than Vans.
I know. And so it's like, and again, it goes back to, and it's something it's a through line through all of this, like especially once they get into like the hardcore, like the third episode, where they're talking like several people say, we're punk, but then it's people were like, no, there are rules about what's punk, and like I forget who it was. What's the guy's name? Because I got to give him credit for this.
I was kind of hoping it was Rollins.
It wasn't Rollins. It was
he's kind of the street philosopher and all that group.
I think it wasn't him. And you'll have to forgive me for not being able to pull all this stuff right, because I know I just watched it last night, but it's still one of those things where like the sheer volume of people who are presented in this thing, sometimes it just all runs together.
A little overwhelming.
I can't remember who it was. Maybe I will drop a note whenever I do the post on this of who it was. But basically said, it was one of those things where punk music started off and it was there are no rules, you can do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
As long as it stays inside this box. And he was like, that's not freedom. And I get that, because we've all seen it. We've seen it in punk, we've seen it in metal, we've seen it in all kinds of stuff where it's like, as soon as you do something that's just a little outside of what people have determined is punk, well, you're not punk anymore. Why not? It's, well, you stepped outside the box. Well, screw your box. Punk music is not supposed to be inside of a box. It's supposed to be all encompassing. It's whatever you decide it's going to be. Metal's kind of, metal has. Let's be honest, there are certain rules with metal.
Yeah, and a million different subgenres.
Exactly, and so it's kind of one of those things where it gets very daunting after a while trying to figure it out. So.
Let's be honest, if it wasn't for Lemmy Kilmister, that's the guy who actually got the punk kids and the metal kids talking to each other.
I know, and what's so great was it like Duff McKagan, like I said, was in this. And he was during the 80s. They're talking about the hardcore stuff. And he was talking about the bands that he played because he started off playing punk music. And he said that it was one of those things that after a few years he was like, "This is done. I need to go find what's the next thing in rock music."
Yeah,
because this has become too. It's become too up its own butt, basically, is what it came down to. And Henry Rollins even talked about the 5 years that he was in Black Flag, and he was like, I was in Black Flag from 81 to 86, and when I left in 86, I pretty much decided that punk was dead, because it was one of those things that we had seen it co-opted by so many groups that we didn't want involved. That and he says it's one of those things that they talked about the DC scene and all that kind of stuff. That it literally would be one of those things where different bands had different gangs associated with them. And he was like, that's not what it was supposed to be. But that it was not supposed to be that by any stretch of the imagination. He talked about it in the 5 years that he was in Black Flag, that punching somebody just became second nature because that was the only way to survive. It was kind of one of those things where somebody, somebody was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And it was immediate, just pow. And then they were like, "What'd you do that for?" It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's just kind of because you just didn't know what was going to happen because it had become so violent and so, and it's a sad state of anything. We've all, they did talk a lot about the mosh pits and everything about how it's hey, we saw people for the longest time who would they would go down, people would pick them up and go along. It's all of a sudden we saw people go down and they might not come back up again.
In fact, there's a good chance they were going to get curb stomped while they were down there.
Exactly. And so, they would see that kind of stuff happen from time to time, and it was just
You knew the difference between the metal kids and the punk kids because the metal kids would help you back up.
For the most part.
Let's say it was a Pantera show or something like that.
That was Lord of the Flies, believe me. As someone who survived one of those mosh pits.
Yeah, you and me both. But, the punk kids, if you went down, you were probably getting curb stomped by multiple people.
Now, that has changed quite a bit over the years. Punk has definitely become a more kinder, gentler scene than it used to be. Thankfully, in a lot of ways.
It got to the point to where they realized that we're fighting ourselves and we're getting our butts handed to us by everybody else. If we don't start getting together and getting along, this is not going to last.
So, but yeah, if you can find it, if you have Epics or, there might be a DVD release of this. I don't know. Go and check it out. It's really good. There's some great interviews in here. Great interviews. And, some of it is well tread. There are some other things where you start learning about other, some other stuff. But I really enjoyed it again because I was not a punk kid to begin with. I was a metal kid. I was a little metalhead, whatever. And it was one of those things that I have said this many times. It's the older I got, the more I started identifying with punk music a lot more and more and more and more and more.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't really care as long as it was rock and it was loud and it was heavy.
And don't get me wrong. There's still a little metal kid inside of me, as well. And the thing is there's a lot of crossover between the two.
Great big giant metal kids.
And that's the whole we talked about. Motorhead was kind of the bridge between the two.
Yeah.
You had Guns N' Roses. It was a great, hard rock punk.
Yeah.
Where you took the best of both and kind of jammed them together. There's been plenty of other. You can look at somebody like Social Distortion. Who did the same thing. It's okay, we got hard rock and we got punk that we put together here. They made their own.
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't really talk about Minneapolis punk a whole lot.
Really?
Which is something that was a big
that's
no
surprising.
No Husker to do. It's just wow, that's kind of. But
you would think they would get a little bit into at least the Chicago noise scene.
Again, you can't cover everything.
No, but the Minneapolis scene was a big part of that.
It really was, especially throughout in the post-hardcore, punk era, absolutely. And it's just called punk. That's all it is, and it's really cool, and I've thoroughly endorsed. It's well worth your 4 hours. I mean, and it is like an episode is like 55 minutes long or something. So it's one of those things where you're getting like actual almost 4 full hours.
They probably should have stretched it out into like a television series.
Yeah, I mean no.
Really?
No. You get exactly what you need out of it, in my opinion.
We didn't get
Minneapolis, I know, but it's still one of those things where you remember that what was it, that Metal Headbanger's Journey or whatever it was, that like VH1 kind of stretched out into a series. And some of them were really good and some of them weren't. It was and it was kind of one of those things where it was like, do we really need 8 episodes of this? Can't we just I think 4 would have been good for
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe 6. I don't know. Because there's so many subgenres in metal that I get it.
The kid they had kind of pulling the whole thing together, though, wasn't exactly the greatest either.
Yeah, but he had a lot of knowledge and a lot of enthusiasm, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Yeah. And I really enjoyed like once they finally got to the new metal, and he's just like, yeah, I don't get this.
That and the Norwegian black metal, where they scared the absolute crap out of him, and he thought he was going to die.
I tell you what, once you want to like get a messed up story, start looking at like that 90s Norwegian black metal stuff, and like the murders that went along with it,
the
and the church burnings,
and
just everything that went into that was like, whoa, these guys took it to a whole new level.
Well, it's basically the 80s hardcore scene.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So guys, thank you so much for listening to us ramble. We do have some more
berries coming.
And we also have a couple of more focused episodes on the way
at some point.
And but we figured this would be a good palate cleanser, and also to get us back into the swing of things.
Yeah, kind of knock a little of the rust off.
So if you would go and check out our Instagram and Discord and Facebook. We have links to all that stuff in our
hey, come over to Discord. You can chat with us directly over there, and we both kind of live over there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, quite honestly, we'll go and post stuff, but a lot of times it's not until someone comments on something that we really come back into it.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. We're all adults and we have other responsibilities. So,
we've got that IRL thing going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Say that again real fast. Is that what all the kids are saying these days, Dave?
I don't know.
So, guys, thank you.
It's that online chat garbage.
I know. So, guys, thank you so much. Come back. We will be back on a regular. Oh man, my brain is so much mush right now. We will be back on a regular schedule starting this week and all through the going forward. And we really do hope that you guys enjoyed Octoberfest, because we had a blast. We always hate to see it end, because we love Halloween.
We got to give a shout out to. My brain just went to mush. Our new logo.
Oh yeah, it's a Creatures and Creeps.
Yeah,
bracket over there, and she did a wonderful job. And there is, again, go and look in our notes. Because you can go, we've got a link there to her website as well as her Instagram.
Yep.
And she's really cool on top of it. That's another thing. She's a huge fan of the Dead Boys.
Oh,
and
nice.
It was one of those things that she was
one of us.
I know. And so she was like posting some stuff a couple weeks ago, and I was like, you do know that Cheetah Chrome lives here in Nashville? She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I saw him play like a little club deal, 15 years ago or something,
Nice.
So yeah, it's kind of cool to find some other, punk rock Halloween fans. Speaking of which, I got a new tattoo, but it's very, very punk Halloween.
Go over to Instagram. You can see a picture of it.
Did I put that on Instagram or was that in Discord? I know I put it in Discord. I may have put it on Instagram.
Put it on Instagram. Let the folks see it.
So anyways, guys, thank you so much. I am Alan Smith.
I'm the other guy, Big Dave.
And we will see you next time with Barry.
Barry's coming.
That's right. We don't know if that's an endorsement or a threat.
Both. I like to think of it as both.
Guys, thank you.
Have a good one. See ya.